Intro. Did you know one old Hollywood star never wore underwear on set, and another made his co-star eat 8 pieces of cheesecake in one scene? Shocking, right? These are the kinds of behind-the-scenes secrets we'll discover. Why did studios keep hiring actors that nobody liked working with? Let's find out, with 15 juicy stories of difficult Hollywood legends. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was the silent film genius with the little mustache and bowler hat. But on set, he was super picky and bossy. He wanted every scene exactly right, no matter how long it took. In one movie, he made an actress repeat a simple line 342 times. She just had to say, "Flower, sir," and he still made her do it again and again. His co-stars were exhausted and frustrated, but Chaplin didn't care. He even wrote, directed, and starred in his own films, so he was the boss of everything. People said working with Charlie could be a nightmare, because he'd spend all day getting one tiny scene perfect. So why did he still get hired? Because he was a genius. His movies like City Lights and Modern Times turned out brilliant and made audiences laugh and cry. Studio bosses knew that even if Charlie was hard to work with, the final film would be amazing. One author called Chaplin the king of the retake. Co-stars might have secretly groaned, but they kept working with him because his perfection paid off on the big screen. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was a handsome adventure star, famous for sword fighting and swinging from ropes in movies. But off-camera, he was a wild troublemaker. He loved partying all night and often showed up to work late or not at all. On The Adventures of Robin Hood, Errol frustrated his directors by ignoring rules and coming late every day. He joked around and even tormented one director so much that the studio had to replace him. His close friend, actor David Niven, said you always knew Errol would let you down. He enjoyed causing turmoil for himself and his friends. In one film with Bette Davis, Bette got angry because Errol was paid more, and she thought he wasn't serious enough as an actor. Errol Flynn's colleagues often rolled their eyes at his pranks, drinking, and lack of discipline, but he kept getting starring roles. Why? Audiences adored him. He had magnetic charm and daring energy that made his pirate and hero movies big hits. Studios put up with Errol's antics because every time he swashed a buckle, fans flocked to theaters. Even with scandals and a court trial, the studios knew his name on a poster meant money. So, they sighed and kept that wild child around. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was a glamorous leading lady, but many people in Hollywood said she was tough as nails. On movie sets, Joan wanted things her way and could be mean to those who crossed her. One famous story. While filming Johnny Guitar, Joan got so angry at her co-star Mercedes McCambridge that she tossed Mercedes's clothes onto a highway for cars to run over. Mercedes called Joan a mean, tipsy, powerful, rotten egg lady, and Joan coldly quipped, "I have 4 children. I do not need a 5th." Ouch! Joan also had a legendary feud with actress Bette Davis. Bette joked that Joan had dated every man in Hollywood, except the dog, Lassie, and Joan snapped back that Bette only acted by yelling while Joan would calmly knit on set. Their fights were the talk of the town. Joan's directors often dreaded her diva demands. One director didn't want to hire her at first, complaining about her hi-hat airs and her goddamn shoulder pads. But Joan had serious star power. She even insisted the studios put Pepsi Cola machines on all her sets after she married the Pepsi president. Why keep hiring someone so difficult? Joan Crawford was a box office queen. She won an Oscar for Mildred Pierce and had a huge fan following. Studios found that Joan's hard work often led to hit films. Even when labeled box office poison, she clawed her way back. Basically, Joan might have been the queen of mean on set, but she was also Hollywood royalty who delivered memorable performances that kept studios in business. Bette Davis. Bette Davis had big, bright eyes and even bigger talent. She was unafraid to play nasty or bold characters on screen, and off-screen she could be just as feisty. Bette had a reputation for being very difficult and mercurial. Co-workers said Bette had to be the entire band and all the instruments. She wanted control of everything. On several films, she caused delays by storming off set, faking illnesses, or refusing to continue if she was unhappy. Once, filming a TV show, Bette insisted on doing a scene with her back to the camera because she didn't like how her injured face looked. When the young producer complained, Bette screamed at him, "I was acting before you were even thought of," basically telling him she had been a star long before he was born. She could be that sassy. Why did studios and crews put up with Bette's temper? Because she was one of the best actresses ever. Bette Davis won 2 Oscars and was nominated 11 times. She delivered powerhouse performances that wowed audiences. Her movies made money and got critical praise. People in Hollywood knew Bette could be bossy and loud. But they also knew that when she was on screen, you couldn't take your eyes off her. As one colleague said, Bette had creative ruthlessness, and she absolutely did things the hard way. In the end, her talent was so immense that studios gambled that the drama behind the camera would be worth it for the drama she gave in front of the camera. Talula Bankhead. Talula Bankhead was a stage and screen actress known for her outrageous personality. She smoked, she drank, she said whatever popped into her mind. Definitely not a typical polite lady of the 1940s. On the set of Alfred Hitchcock's film Lifeboat, Talula shocked everyone by not wearing any underwear under her costume. When the crew complained of her, revealing exits and entries, director Hitchcock quipped, "I don't know if this is a matter for the costume department or hairdressing." Talula thought that was hilarious. She also had a habit of using very colorful language and cracking dirty jokes that made more proper folks gasp. Co-stars sometimes found her attention-seeking behavior tiring. Talula always wanted to be the center of everything. She reportedly claimed to have a huge number of romantic flings and even would flash people as a joke. Once, a co-actor said he couldn't tell if Talula was acting or just behaving like her wild self. Still, directors kept casting her. Why? Talula had genuine talent and charisma. She won a big award for a Broadway play and was unforgettable on stage. In films, even if she was trouble, she gave unique, bold performances. Also, she was famous in high society, which brought publicity. So even though she broke the rule, Talula's fearless spirit and one-of-a-kind voice kept her working. Everyone might have shaken their heads at her antics, but they also laughed and remembered her, and that was good for the box office. Mae West. Mae West was the original Hollywood diva who loved double entendres. She was clever, funny, and always in charge, which could drive her directors crazy. Mae wrote her own plays, and when she got to Hollywood, she basically wrote her own movies too. In fact, she refused to appear in her first film unless she could rewrite all her lines to her liking. The studio gave in, and Mae's rewritten lines became famous, witty zingers. Mae West also insisted on selecting her co-stars, often choosing men who wouldn't outshine her. If a leading man was too tall or too handsome, she might replace him with someone more average. Mae had to be the sparkle of the show. On set, she was known to show up late sometimes and delay production. But she'd just smirk and drawl one of her famous lines like, "When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better." People joked that May didn't follow rules because she made the rules. She battled censors with her spicy content and even got arrested once in her early theater days for doing a play called Sex. But why did Hollywood keep her around? Mae West was a sensation. Her humor was daring, and audiences in the 1930s loved it. Her films made tons of money and even saved Paramount Studio from financial ruin. Every time she'd purr a line like, "Goodness had nothing to do with it, dearie," the crowd would roar. Mae West was a smart businesswoman. She knew her worth and demanded respect. So, while directors might have grumbled that working with Mae was challenging, they also knew that when Mae West was bad, she was better. And by bad, we mean delightfully naughty and profitable. Judy Garland. Judy Garland stole everyone's hearts as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, singing "Over the Rainbow." But as she grew up, working with Judy became very hard for Hollywood. Judy had a beautiful voice and could light up the screen, but she also struggled with anxiety and was treated poorly by her studio as a teen. By her 20s, Judy was often late to film shoots or too sick to work, leaving casts and crews waiting around. In one movie in the 1950s, the studio fired Judy because she would come hours late, or sometimes not show up at all, forget her lines, and have emotional breakdowns. It got so bad they called her unreliable and even unemployable, a big word meaning no one wanted to hire her because they couldn't count on her to finish a film. Co-stars loved Judy as a friend, but they found working with her frustrating because schedules would get messed up. Once, a producer noticed things were going smoothly on A Star Is Born. Judy was on time for months, but when the pressure mounted, she relapsed into old habits, and filming stretched on and on. Yet, studios kept giving Judy one more chance. Why? Her talent was just that enormous. Judy Garland could sing a song and bring an audience to tears or laughter, like no one else. When she was on, she delivered pure movie magic. For example, in Summer Stock, she was terribly delayed. But then she performed Get Happy, and it became an iconic number. Studios hoped each time that this Judy Garland movie would go smoothly and replicate the success of her earlier hits. Fans still adored her, so the executives were reluctant to let such a golden talent go. Sadly, by the 1960s, Judy's health and reputation were so damaged that Hollywood did stop hiring her. But her legend lives on, proving that all those headaches were worth it for the joy she gave on screen. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was the ultimate blonde bombshell. On camera, she seemed so charming and effortless. Off camera, she gave her directors and co-stars gray hairs with her on-set antics. Marilyn was often late to set, sometimes hours late, because of her insecurities and illnesses. She would forget her lines, do many retakes, and the crew would groan, "Here we go again." In the comedy Some Like It Hot, her constant mistakes drove actor Tony Curtis crazy. In fact, he joked that kissing Marilyn was like kissing Hitler. Another co-star remarked Marilyn could be mean, the meanest woman, and utterly fabulous on the screen at the same time. Her director, Billy Wilder, summed it up perfectly with a famous quote, "My Aunt Minnie would always be punctual and never hold up production, but who would pay to see my Aunt Minnie?" That meant Marilyn's magic was worth the trouble. Indeed, even though nobody liked the delays she caused, everyone kept hiring Marilyn Monroe. Why? When the camera rolled, she glowed. In movies like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes or The 7-Year Itch, she was funny, sexy, and irresistible. Audiences fell in love with her. The studios made a fortune because people would line up around the block to watch Marilyn. Directors learned to be patient and take dozens of takes if needed, because the end result was gold. One director said working with Marilyn was awful, but also admitted, who would pay to see a punctual Aunt Minnie? They pay to see Marilyn. So they put up with her Marilyn moments, the tardiness, the coaching her through scenes, because once she finally got it right, she lit up the screen like nobody else. It's a classic case of a star whose shine was so bright, everyone tolerated a little burn. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake was the actress with the famous peekaboo hairstyle that every girl in the 1940s wanted to copy. On screen, she was alluring and cool, but behind the scenes, Veronica had a reputation for being extremely difficult. She was late, rude, and uncooperative at times, and she developed a drinking problem that worsened her behavior. In fact, her Sullivan's Travels co-star, Joel McCrea, refused to do another movie with her, saying, "Life's too short for 2 films with Veronica Lake." That's a fancy way of saying she was such a pain once that he'd never risk it again. Veronica was also known for playing pranks on co-stars she didn't like. During I Married a Witch, she disliked actor Frederick March, who had to carry her in a scene, so Veronica hid a 40-pound weight under her dress to make him struggle. These antics earned her the nickname Veronica Lake by some in Hollywood, implying she wasn't acting very smart. Veronica's difficult attitude meant her career declined fast. By the late 40s, roles dried up because word got around that she was trouble. Yet for a while, studios cast her in big films. Why? She had genuine talent and a unique screen presence. In her early movies like This Gun for Hire and The Glass Key, Veronica Lake was a box office draw. Audiences were fascinated by her look and style. For a time, having her name on a movie poster meant ticket sales. Studios tried to manage her behavior, hoping the problem Veronica would not show up and the glamorous star Veronica would shine through. Unfortunately, her troubles eventually overshadowed her talent, and Hollywood moved on. Still, Veronica Lake remains a legend, a reminder that sometimes the brightest stars burn out quickly, especially if they don't play nice with others. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando changed acting forever with his natural, mumbly style. He was truly brilliant on camera. But working with Brando? Oh boy, that could be a nightmare. As he got more famous, Marlon developed a habit of defying directors and doing whatever he pleased. On the set of Mutiny on the Bounty, he practically took over the director's job. Brando was constantly late, clashed with co-stars, and even refused to act in scenes he didn't like. One replacement director said Brando would just stand there and not perform if the script didn't suit him. He thought only of himself. The director sighed. Marlon demanded endless rewrites of dialogue and changed lines on the fly. He also didn't bother memorizing lines sometimes. In later years, he used hidden earpieces feeding him his dialogue. Co-stars were often bewildered by his behavior. For instance, in Guys and Dolls, Brando and Frank Sinatra feuded the whole time. Brando's antics on Mutiny on the Bounty made the film go hugely over budget and over schedule. It flopped and hurt his reputation. After that, he didn't get a great role again for nearly a decade. So why on earth did people keep hiring Marlon Brando? Because when he did care to act, he was arguably the best there ever was. Brando's performances in A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, and later The Godfather are iconic. He won Oscars, and audiences were mesmerized by him. Directors would roll the dice on Marlon, praying they'd get the motivated Brando and not the bratty Brando. In the late 50s and 60s, his box office power dipped due to his behavior, but many in Hollywood still considered him acting royalty. They were willing to endure his bad boy behavior, hoping for a cinematic miracle. And indeed, Brando gave some of cinema's greatest performances. just on his terms. In short, Marlon Brando was a brilliant brat, infuriating to work with, but absolutely unforgettable on screen. Orson Welles. Orson Welles exploded onto the scene by making Citizen Kane at just 25 years old, one of the greatest films ever. He was a writer, director, and actor, and he knew he was smart, maybe a little too aware of it. Orson was famously difficult to get along with because of his ego and stubborn vision. After his radio prank War of the Worlds scared America, he went to Hollywood with a giant contract giving him full control. He made Citizen Kane secretly based on a powerful newspaper tycoon, William Randolph Hearst. When Hearst found out, he went on the warpath, banning any mention of the film in his newspapers and trying to stop it from being released. Orson fought with studio bosses and producers a lot, insisting on doing things his way. He was known to blow budgets and ignore schedules because he was chasing perfection. Some colleagues admired his genius, but said his personality could be overbearing. Orson always thought he was the smartest person in the room. For example, when making The Magnificent Ambersons, Orson left the country to start another project, and the studio took that chance to re-edit his film. They were that frustrated with him. So why did Orson keep getting opportunities? His talent and creativity were off the charts. Hollywood realized that in Orson Welles they had a mind that could produce groundbreaking art. He was brilliant and innovative, and actors liked being in his films because they often turned out to be classics. Even if he was a headache, everyone wanted to find the next Citizen Kane. As one article put it, Orson might have been hard for most people to handle, but he was also a brilliant and creative filmmaker. And indeed, Welles left a huge mark on cinema. Studios sometimes regretted working with him, but they definitely didn't regret the masterpieces that resulted when things clicked. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was a superstar singer who also acted in many films. He had charm to spare in front of the camera, but behind it, old blue eyes could be difficult. Frank had a hot temper and a lot of pull in Hollywood. On movie sets, if something annoyed him, he wouldn't hesitate to yell or walk off. For instance, during Guys and Dolls, Sinatra desperately wanted the lead role that went to Marlon Brando, so there was bad blood. In one scene, Sinatra's character had to eat cheesecake while Brando talked. Knowing Frank hated cheesecake, Brando devilishly kept flubbing the last line on purpose, take after take. Sinatra had to eat a new slice each time, and after 8 takes, he snapped. He threw his plate down and shouted, "How much cheesecake do you think I can eat?" The crew probably ducked for cover when Frank blew up like that. Sinatra also was known to do things in one take and refuse to do more. He'd say, "You got it? Good. Moving on," even if the director wanted another take. Sinatra's co-workers often found him intimidating. Some called him a bully if you caught him in a foul mood. He also had connections, rumored mafia pals, that made people afraid to cross him. So, with all that attitude, why did he keep landing roles? Because he was Frank Sinatra. He had an undeniable star quality and a huge fan base. In films like From Here to Eternity and High Society, Sinatra proved he wasn't just a singer. He could really act. His name on a marquee meant tickets would sell, and his singing in musicals was a big draw too. Also, when he wanted to, Sinatra could be professional and give a strong performance. Hollywood wasn't going to toss aside one of the most popular entertainers ever, even if he was a headache with a hat on. So directors learned to work around Frank's moods, usually by getting things right the first time. In short, Sinatra ran the show like the boss he was nicknamed, and as long as the movies made money, the studios went along with it. Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis was the goofy comedian who made audiences roar with laughter in the 1940s to 60s. On camera, he was all silly faces and pratfalls, but off camera, many people discovered a not-so-nice side. Jerry had a reputation for being rude, sarcastic, and extremely demanding. When he was part of the comedy team Martin and Lewis, Jerry often hogged the spotlight, and it eventually led to a bitter breakup with Dean Martin. People who met Jerry sometimes found him obnoxious. One guard on a set said Jerry was obnoxious, rude, and arrogant to everyone. He could also be very difficult in interviews and public appearances, snapping at questions he didn't like. Later in life, a video of him giving one-word answers to an interviewer went viral because he seemed so unfriendly. Jerry also made disparaging jokes at times. He once said he didn't like female comedians. His dark moods were the flip side to his zany comedic energy. As one person said, Jerry had a happy, funny side and a brooding, angry side. On film sets, Jerry Lewis was a perfectionist, like Chaplin. But unlike Chaplin, he didn't always have the patience to be polite. As a director of his own movies, he could be very hard on his crew, expecting them to keep up with his rapid pace and vision. Some actors avoided working with him more than once. Yet, Hollywood kept hiring Jerry Lewis or letting him make movies. Why? He was a comedy hitmaker. Throughout the 50s and early 60s, his films were big box office successes, especially with family audiences. Also, in France, he was considered a genius of comedy. That international fame added to his draw. Studios also appreciated that he was a pioneer behind the camera. In short, even if Jerry Lewis made life unpleasant for those around him, he delivered laugh and ticket sales. Many said it was like there were two Jerrys, the goofy kid on screen and the grouchy guy off screen. As long as the goofy kid made people laugh, Hollywood tolerated the grouch. Wallace Berry. Wallace Berry was a character actor who often played gruff, burly men on screen. And it turns out, he was pretty gruff in real life, too. In the 1930s, Wallace Berry was a big star at MGM Studios, but nobody who worked with him seemed to like him. He was known as a selfish bully on set. For example, child actor Jackie Cooper made a few movies with Berry, including The Champ, where Berry played Jackie's father. Jackie later said Wallace Berry treated him like an unwanted dog as soon as cameras stopped rolling. Berry would upstage the poor kid, trying to steal scenes and attention out of jealousy. In one emotional moment after a scene, little Jackie hugged Berry, and Berry shoved him away without a care. How mean is that? Berry even went to the studio bosses and got a rule added that no child actor could get a close-up in his movies. He couldn't even share the spotlight with a kid. Adults didn't fare much better. Berry got into feuds with top actors of his day. He walked off the set of Grand Hotel until Joan Crawford learned to act, he said. He also picked on the lovely actress Jean Harlow, who couldn't stand him either. He was so nasty that one co-star, Marie Dressler, called him a baboon and threatened to personally make him behave, which, shockingly, made him act like a scolded little boy for a while. It sounds like a wonder anyone would work with Wallace Berry at all. But here's why studios kept him around. He was a big moneymaker. In the early 1930s, Berry was so popular that MGM's contract said he had to be paid $1 more than any other actor at the studio. Audiences loved the funny, gruff characters he played. He often starred in adventure and family films that did very well. Basically, he was the bad guy people loved to watch. Also, some of his nastiness was overlooked because it was the old studio system. Actors were under contract, and studios would team people up even if they hated each other. Wallace Berry took advantage of that power. It wasn't until later years that his difficult behavior slowed down his career. But for a while, as much as co-stars might have loathed him, Wallace Berry was a guaranteed draw. The studio even intervened when he tied for an Oscar, ensuring he got the trophy. So, the lesson from Wallace Berry's story: you can be the champ on screen and a chump off screen, and still have Hollywood at your feet. For a time, at least.